I first came across you because I saw a tweet on Twitter at the time where you were explaining the situation that had happened with your band. Was that 2021?
Yeah, it was 3 years ago, 2021,
Yeah, 3 years
early
ago.
August. Yeah. Yeah. And it was amazing that you saw that because, and I know I thank you every time I see you, but you reposting that early on got it in front of people who would be receptive to what I was trying to say, because anyone who was speaking out against the vaccine mandates or anything that was happening at the time, you were just crucified. I mean, it was just a flamethrower. And that's what I was expecting. I wrote to one of my best friends right before I put that statement out. I was like, hey, posting it now, bracing for impact. And I just expected a firing squad and flamethrowers. And it really, at first it just kind of, some of the fans were confused and asking questions, and then it started getting shared. When you shared it, then it was shared everywhere, and people were pouring in with support. And I did not expect that at all. I was, mostly just trying to let people know, like, hey, here's why I won't be on tour, on this tour that's coming up. Because I had people hitting me up for tickets, like the band was playing in Nashville, and everyone's like, hey, I want to come to your show. And I'm like, how do I tell people 5,000 times that I won't be there and why I won't be there? And I didn't want to have to say it over and over and over. And so I was like, well, we'll just say what we need to say. And, here's why I won't be there anymore. I'm not getting this vaccine. I'm not allowed to come back without it. Here's where we're at. And there was plenty of people that showed up to, throw crap at me. And I've been called all kinds of fun names that, I don't identify with. But the outpouring of support from people from around the world, like so many people that came out and said, hey, I thank you for saying something. I thought I was the only person that felt this way, because you weren't allowed to talk about it. And that's what it felt like for me was, it's not like anyone cares who's playing drums on Pretty Fly for a White Guy. It was not a big deal that there was going to be a different drummer in that band. To me, it was, I've got kids. And if we all lay down here and give up our rights to decide what goes in our bodies and not, it doesn't stop there. It's like, oh, they were willing to allow us that. Let's push more. Let's take more things away. So for me, number one, I was out of a job and I needed to find work. And by skulking away and not saying anything, because I was afraid of being labeled an anti-vaxxer or whatever, nonsense they want to throw at you, it wasn't good for me, because it was like, if I don't show my kids how to stand up here, that there's no opportunity, there's no amount of money, there's no job or anything that's worth giving up your bodily sovereignty. Like, they need to see me do this, because when you have teenagers, they stop listening to you, but they're watching. They take everything in by what you do. They don't take as seriously what you say. And so it was kind of like, all right, well, Dad's going to light his life and his career on fire here, because it is this important that you get this message. And both of them were doing musical theater at the time here in Nashville, and the theater community was maybe the worst of the real COVID heavy, like masking and testing. And, they were getting a lot of pressure of, oh, you guys didn't get the vaccine yet, you're not vaccinated. And
just to jump in there, why do you think that is? Why do you think those particular communities were so?
I think that it's a great question. My opinion is the rise of the virtue signaling crusaders really took over a lot of these areas, because it wasn't political for me not to get this. It was medical for me. I've had a history of bad reactions to vaccines. I'm not going to go through that, especially with a new technology. It's not good. I had a medical exemption that was disregarded, by my former employers. And, so for me, there were so many things going on that made no sense. If you're out there saying, we're so noble, we're so virtuistic, everyone's got to do this so we can protect the people who can't get it, and you go, hey, I'm one of those people, and they're like, nope, you don't count. You need to get it too. We're not talking about you. We're talking about faceless, nameless people who can't get it.
Grandmas.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, so it doesn't even matter. Like, even that virtue signaling was a lie. Like, everyone's got to get it so we can protect the people that can't, because if you couldn't get it, you were still supposed to get it. And then if you wouldn't, then the consequences are all on you. And it's like, well, I know my body and I know my history and I know this is going to mess me up. I've already had COVID. I'm not overweight. I'm not on prescription medications. I don't have diabetes. I have no underlying medical conditions. There's no benefit for me to get this. There's absolutely none. Yeah. So why should I? And
it's also crazy that people feel you even need to explain it.
Well, that was the other thing. It was like, but I was like, well, I need to work. So if somebody's willing to have an unvaccinated drummer out there, like let's see what happens. But I need to show my kids, but I really wanted to, because I felt alone in it. I felt crazy. Like I'm the one, because I'm told, everyone around me is telling me I'm crazy. And I'm like, hey, this isn't going to just be 2 shots. You're crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist. It's just get the 2 and you're done. And now we're up to 10, so, but I'm crazy. And I just kept having to swallow that. And, so I didn't want anyone else who was feeling like me to feel, at least there's one person out here who cares enough to go, hey, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Me getting it for me not getting it for me, I have a medical exemption, but it's not just about making it big enough for me. Like you shouldn't have to have an excuse here. Like no is a complete sentence. Are you going to get this? No. That should have been acceptable anywhere.
Yes.
And it wasn't. And my wife and I did a lot of research on everything. I mean, we sent this screen grab that she grabbed off the FDA or CDC's website January 2021 that clearly said while we did not test this for specifically for transmission or anything, we are hopeful that it will, blah, blah, blah. It's not there anymore. That's why we grabbed it. And I've put it up online a few times and people always say, oh, that's fake. You made that up. It's not. I sent it to some of the smartest people I knew at the time and no one had an answer for that. And I would say, why are they saying it's 95% effective there, but that's relative risk reduction. It's not. The absolute risk reduction is less than 1%. It's the same as your chance of dying from it. So what is this vaccine actually doing? And if that's the case, why are they saying it's 95% effective when they know that that's based on nonsense? We're coming across all these things and none of it mattered because the industry as a whole was, hey, you've got to get this thing, if you want to get back to work. And I think largely that was the problem at the time, about the summer of 2021, when all this came to a head. People were starting to go back on tour, but we had spent a year and a half terrifying everyone to don't leave your house, don't touch your neighbor, don't breathe, don't go anywhere, don't gather in crowds. And now all of a sudden we want to turn the money faucet back on and get people out to shows. So, the industry by and large came up with the idea of the fully vaccinated tour.
Yes.
So now as long as we say that the band and the crew, everyone out there has been fully vaccinated and has their little papers and they're all perfectly good, wonderful people, that the crowds can all come back. Yes. Yes. And we're all going to sweat and scream and yell back and forth on each other. But, there's this magical invisible wall between the people on stage and the people in the crowd, and it's fine. And at first, some artists came out and did shows where you had to be vaccinated. They would only play for, and that went away really quick because while they were figuring this out, they found out really fast mandating the vaccine on your band and your crew was good for business. Mandating on the audience was bad for business. Well, now if the audience doesn't need it, now why does everyone in the band and crew need it? And, none of it made any sense.
The way it's fallen apart, I mean, just the fact that, I remember having these conversations 3 years ago and the level of fear, like it's just amazing to me that we're not talking about ancient history now. And now the way that, firstly, everyone acts like none of it, well, it didn't really happen, and none of that happened. I didn't do that. I didn't say that. Yeah. No one's apologized. No one's taken any accountability.
Yeah.
It's just moved on, like you said, with the news cycle. Oh, new thing happens. I often say that Putin ended the pandemic. Soon as he rolled into Ukraine.
Yeah. Now we have a new thing to focus on.
The narrative just switched,
overnight.
And all of a sudden, nobody cared. All this stuff that people have been freaking out about for the past 2 years, none of it mattered anymore. Everything just dropped. All the mandates, all their shit, just people, travel, party, like whatever. And it's like, wait, isn't that scary virus like still out there? Like, aren't people? It's like it's still out there right now. No one gives a crap. You still got like 0.1% 5% of like people who are still masking and, you know, still going with it all. But generally speaking, like nobody cares. People
No.
are not getting their 10th booster.
Yeah, no
Like,
one's
if they were consistent, they would be.
right.
But
yeah,
they're not.
Because back then, if you wouldn't do it, you were an anti-vaxxer, which is worse than being a racist, or like you're an anti-vaxxer. And now it's like, all right, well, if you're not up to date, are you on the bad team now? Are we all over here not taking it? Like, but now it's okay. To me, the funniest thing was when, you know, you get on an airplane, and for the longest time it was, gotta have your mask on, you know, take it down to take a sip and keep it on, you're asleep, whatever,
flashbacks.
have it on. And now it's like, you know, please be respectful to,
People
you know,
who are still
people that are still wearing them or whatever. And I was like, where was the respect for people who didn't want to? We were just called grandma killers and the worst thing. But, you know, no one could make a better argument of like, no one had an answer for anything that I tried to put out. And, you know, so we put out that statement. You know, I got swiftly canceled in the industry, but, you know, the amount of support, that the weird thing, my wife likes to say that sticking my neck out and saying something made me a bit of a lighthouse in the industry, because then anyone who felt the same way I did reached out to me like crazy, just bombarded with, you know, big artists, people I didn't know, going, hey, you know, I'm with you. Sure wish I could say something, but I don't want it to cost me anything. And I was always like, all right, but where's your line?